On today's show, how the LA Clippers finally beat the Minnesota Timberwolves after going 0-2 in their first two meetings this season. Who steps up in the Clippers rotation with Russell Westbrook out due to his fractured hand? And why is Paul George slumping so much as of late? It's all coming up right here at Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins, and all you have to do is wager $5. It's so easy. Bet on all of your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. Right now, you can take a look at the outright betting favorites for the NBA title this season. The Boston Celtics, far and away the favorites at plus 210. Right behind them, the Denver Nuggets, plus 420 to repeat. Just behind the Nuggets, LA Clippers, plus 500. The Milwaukee Bucks at plus 700. And then in distant fifth place, the Phoenix Suns, plus 1,800. So for all that action and so much more, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Clippers, Darian Vaziri, who can follow wherever you listen to your podcast and on YouTube. Just search Locked On Clippers. And Darian, a potential Western Conference playoff preview potentially between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the LA Clippers. Now, in the first couple meetups, Clippers went 0-2 when they faced the Timberwolves earlier this season. This recent meetup, they managed to come out on top. Walk us through what was different this time around against the Timberwolves than in the previous two meetups for these two teams.
Well, Jackson, going into this game, I was saying that the Timberwolves are just a terrible matchup for the Clippers. These first two games we've played against them, it has looked like the Clippers are just outsized. They have Karl-Anthony Towns at the 4, and the Clippers don't really have a true 4 in today's NBA. PJ Tucker doesn't get minutes. Kobe Brown is too young to get rotation minutes. So Towns has really abused our lack of size in that matchup. And to start the game on Sunday afternoon, it looked like it was going to be the same. He was going off in the first quarter. They were up 30-15. But the Clippers defense really clamped down in this one. And I think it just is a reminder that when they want to be locked in and play to their best, they really can defensively, and they haven't since the All-Star break, and to be honest, a couple of weeks heading into the All-Star break. But it was a mixture of Minnesota playing poorly offensively, and then the Clippers really tightening it up defensively. I mean, Daniel Tice gave us some really big minutes late. Even though Ivica Zubac didn't play in the first loss to them, he played, but he played limited minutes in this one. And Tice stepped in and was really good. I think Kawhi Leonard had his best game of the 3 matchups. And, I think one of the biggest differences, Jackson, in those first 2 games was Anthony Edwards was the best player on the court. But in this game, Kawhi was the best player on the court. And sometimes, the Clippers played great defense and this and that, started doubling Karl-Anthony Towns second half, and you saw Paul George actually guard him a lot one-on-one, did a really good job. But sometimes it can be as simple as who has the best player. And Kawhi Leonard this time was better than the Ant-Man. But it was a close one. 1-point game, a lot of controversial calls that kind of went the Clippers' way, I might add. I actually ended up watching this game accidentally on the Minnesota broadcast, and I thought they actually did a great job of being very unbiased, but I got to see it from their lens, and there was definitely some calls that went the Clippers' way for once. Usually the Clippers are never the team that gets the benefits of the calls, but we'll take it, and a very huge win, very huge.
Between these two teams, there's a lot of players on both sides who could be the best player on the floor on any given night. So yeah, when you have the best player out there in a given game, it definitely helps give you the edge a little bit. But I tell you what, I would love to see a 7-game series between these two teams at some point down the line in the playoffs. Now, a key piece for this Clippers team that recently went out, Russell Westbrook, left hand fracture. How big of a loss is Russell Westbrook, especially this time of year, right? Gearing up just a month ahead of postseason starting. How big of a loss is it to miss out on Russell Westbrook this time of the year, and will he be back in time hopefully for the postseason?
Well, I don't know if he'll be back, but it's a pretty big loss. I mean, Russ has given us tons of instant energy off the bench, gets to the rim, a secondary playmaker when Harden's out, really good offensive rebounder and just rebounder in general. His cutting has been good as a Clipper. And in the first half of the season, his defense was really sharp. It's kind of been lacking the last couple of games since the All-Star break, and his performance wasn't really good before the injury, to be honest, the last couple of games. But it is a fairly big loss. Not one I think that's going to make too much of a difference against. I want to say it's not going to make too much of a difference against the teams that we should beat, but it's actually those games where sometimes if the Clippers come out a little lethargic, where Russ can come in and give you a kick up the butt and be like, okay, guys, I'm going to try really hard. So hopefully some other guys will start trying a little bit harder too. But I think it also depends on how Bones Highland takes this role. We don't know how long it's going to be that Russ is out. Bones Highland is very capable. He was going to be our backup point guard before we got James Harden. So he's a solid player, in my opinion, that has a lot to show. And I think in his minutes against Minnesota, he showed not only that he is serviceable, but he actually held his own on defense really well, which is the big knock on Bones. And he didn't shot hunt at all. So far, so good for Bones. My thing with Russ is he's definitely a part of our team and our rotation going, trying to go for a championship this year. Getting him back right before the playoffs or potentially in the playoffs, I don't like that. I want to go into the playoffs with some rhythm and Russ having been integrated back into the swing of things. So I am a little bit nervous about that timetable for sure.
Yeah, it's always a little tough, right? Trying to reintegrate a player just before or even during the postseason, especially a guy like Russ who, his impact sometimes doesn't always show up in the box score. Sometimes you just need that shot in the arm, that energy, like you said, that's infectious for other guys. They start playing harder, working harder because he's one of the people that's going to outwork everybody else when he is on the basketball floor. Now, I got to know, and you got to break this down for us. What's going on with Paul George? Because over the last 15 games or so, his numbers are in the tank. He's averaging 17.5 points, 42% from the floor, 31% from three. These are not Paul George numbers. So what's up with him?
So PG had a little groin injury for a bit, and he was struggling a little bit after, but the struggles really were exacerbated right after the All-Star break. Because going into the All-Star break, yeah, he was struggling a bit, but that last game against Golden State before the break, he played pretty well in the fourth quarter and got us a big win on the road on national television without Kawhi. But then these last couple of games, because remember, he went to Indiana to play in the All-Star game and he had double-digit points. But the thing about Paul is he does these kind of things in inefficient shooting, even when he's healthy. So I can't just say it's all the injury. He has a lot of the same tendencies when he's healthy, taking bad shots, taking too many contested jumpers, contested threes, not being aggressive going to the basket. So just making life tougher on himself that need be, over dribbling instead of making a simple move, catching the ball closer to the basket where he can just turn and face. So little things like that. I think Paul George is an expert at making the game more complicated for himself than it needs to be. It's almost like he has too many moves for his own good. He's got no go-to stuff like a Kawhi or even like James Harden. James Harden has that same between crossing. He's got counters to that move. And he goes from that into the step back or into the blow by. Paul, he has such a diverse, array of the ways he can score, but he doesn't seem to really have a go-to kind of thing. And so sometimes his shot diet is just a lot of threes and he can really shoot himself out of a game. So I think that's what's been happening, mixed with the groin injuries probably hurt his burst trying to get downhill, but sometimes he can be hesitant about that anyway. But then there was the recent, apparently he's had knee discomfort all year. He missed 2 consecutive games before he came back against the Wizards, but he played well against the Wizards. Struggled shooting against Minnesota, but he made big shots in the fourth quarter at 7 points. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, guarded Karl-Anthony Towns a bit, so his effort in the second half was better. So I have full confidence that Paul George will come good again. But yeah, it's been one of his biggest slumps as a Clipper. And I think part of it is injury, but part of it is just he needs to be more aggressive. He needs to be smarter. This is the problem with Paul George. He's got all the talent in the world, but sometimes he doesn't make the sharpest decisions. But I have full faith that as the season winds down, he will catch a groove again.
Being able to buoy and kind of offset Paul George with James Harden, who even at times James Harden at this stage in his career has his own inconsistencies of play, right? Having 2 stars who can, sometimes one has it, sometimes the other doesn't. They can kind of offset each other a little bit now. And you've got Kawhi Leonard who can step up again on any given night and be the best player on the floor. Darian, how are we feeling about this Clippers rebrand, man?
So excited, Jackson. I mean, that logo in my background that I have right now, that disgusting LAC in the circle. I hated it the second we got it. This The shirt I'm wearing right now is from 2015, which was the last year before we rebranded. And oh man, I've been waiting to change that logo since we got it. So even though the new logo is not anything I'm going crazy about, I like it more than this one. And the jerseys, so much nicer. I can't wait. I haven't bought a Clipper jersey. Actually, no, I did buy a Terrence Mann blue jersey, but that's because I love the color. But the font was a little weird, and I don't like that logo. But oh man, I'm loving it. I can't wait to buy those three jerseys, white, navy, and red. Who I'm gonna get? I'm gonna get one Paul George, but also honestly, I shouldn't buy them because I gotta wait to see what's on the roster next year.
That's a really good point. You gotta make it through the off season and figure out who the untouchables are, and then go ahead and invest in a jersey a little bit further down the line. But how will the Clippers fare without Russell Westbrook in the rotation? Will they have time to reintegrate him into the lineup ahead of the playoffs? Can Paul George lock in and turn some of these numbers around? You're gonna have us covered for all of that and so much more over at Locked On Clippers. Darian, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Anytime.